There is a grand illusion that this era has successfully implanted into our minds. That connection is the ultimate symbol of power. That holding the entire globe's data stream in the palm of your hand is proof that you are mastering the world. But look at what is actually happening at the very top of our civilization. If hyperconnection truly brings power, why are the most powerful entities on the planet orchestrating massive, quiet escapes from it? In his book Stolen Focus, Johann Hari doesn't start with cliché productivity hacks. He begins with a radical act of social isolation. He fled to a remote beach in Provincetown, locking his smartphone inside a timed safe for 30 consecutive days. A highly educated intellectual, a globally best-selling journalist, was forced to resort to the extreme measures of a severe digital detox. Just to do one simple thing: read a book cover to cover without being distracted. When a deeply trained mind like Hari's can no longer maintain its own focus, we are no longer looking at a personal failure or a lack of willpower. It is the symptom of a systemic collapse, and Hari calls it the heist of the century. Here at Page Condensed, we want to push Hari's thesis one step further. The new class divide of our era is no longer defined by tangible assets. It is defined by cognitive autonomy. In the past, the ultimate symbols of wealth were coastal real estates or luxury designer bags. But today, when almost anything can be acquired through installment plans or perfect replicas, the elite have shifted to a new, exclusive, and unforgeable type of asset. The most expensive real estate in the digital age is mental real estate. The true symbol of power today is unreachability. It is the ability to vanish from the data grid without your world falling apart. Look at the reality unfolding in Silicon Valley, the birthplace of the most habit-forming algorithms on Earth. Here, the chief architects of social media and search engines are sending their own children to elite tech-free academies. Places where screens are strictly forbidden, where children are taught to sew, sculpt clay, and read classic literature. They are paying tens of thousands of dollars a year not to give their kids access to high tech, but to buy back silence, a resource they are systematically extracting from the rest of humanity. Johann Hari points out that we are being turned into raw fuel for the attention economy. But in reality, this system is quietly locking the majority of the human race into a new social stratum, the digital underclass. This class is provided with free social networks and endless 15-second comedy clips. But the hidden cost is a massive, invisible cognitive rewiring on a global scale. This system strips away the capacity for deep reading, the ability to ruminate on complex ideas, and transforms brains that once built civilizations into mere stimulus response machines. Why is this so dangerous? Because when we lose our ability to focus, we lose our ability to see the bigger picture. We become trapped in a shallow reality, where the world's most complex problems are reduced to extreme soundbites and fleeting emotions. A society that cannot focus is a society that cannot govern itself. And what is the most ruthless truth of all? While we are happily surrendering our capacity for thought to glowing rectangles, on the other side of the screen, artificial intelligence is learning to think for us. We are devolving into tools, while our tools are evolving to become us. Our focus is being drained not because we are weak. As Hari exclaimed in frustration, "Stop blaming yourself. You are up against thousands of genius engineers on the other side of the screen, who are paid millions of dollars to break your willpower." But the status trap and psychological manipulation are only the tip of the iceberg. Johann Hari went deep into the laboratories and uncovered a truth far more chilling. The thieves aren't just hiding in the code. Even if you threw your phone into the ocean right now, you would still feel restless, empty, and unable to focus. Why? Because this attack is, at its core, a biological invasion. Your hardware, your very brain and nervous system, is suffering from severe inflammation, poisoned by a highly toxic environment. But here is the most brutal truth Johann Hari discovered. Even if you threw your phone into the ocean this very second, you would still feel that chronic restlessness. Why? Because the thief didn't just steal your time, it staged a biological coup within your own hardware. While the elite are shielding their brains with expensive biohacking protocols and strict organic diets, the rest of the world is being poisoned by an environment designed to trigger a cognitive collapse. We often call this brain fog, but in the research circles Hari consulted, they use a much more direct term: neuro-inflammation. Johann Hari realized that focus is not a mental filter you can simply toggle with willpower. It is the result of a balanced physiological state. But currently, we are living in what he calls an attentional carcinogenic ecosystem. The first strike of this invasion is sitting right on your dinner plate. Hari points out that ultra-processed foods don't just wreck your waistline, they are suspected to interfere with neural regulation. Chemicals like glyphosate and industrial food dyes trigger a misguided immune response. Instead of fighting bacteria, your immune system begins attacking your own neurons. The wow moment here? You can't focus on that book, not because you're lazy, but because your brain behaves as if it were inflamed. When synapses are inflamed, the speed of information transfer slows down, and your impulse control, the very thing that helps you resist picking up your phone, is effectively paralyzed. But this biological invasion goes even deeper. Hari cites chilling research on air pollution. Fine particulate matter, like PM 2.5, doesn't just stop at your lungs, it enters the olfactory bulb and invades the brain directly. The result? Studies suggest cognitive decline correlations and the slow evaporation of the capacity for abstract thought. At page Condensed, we have to ask a blunt question. Why are the ultra-wealthy so obsessed with clean air and pure food? It's not just about longevity. It's about maintaining a competitive intellectual advantage. In a world where the masses are suffering from chronic biochemical brain fog, a clean brain is a weapon of mass destruction. Hari also exposes the wreckage caused by artificial light on our circadian rhythm. When you stare at a screen late at night, you are sowing chaos into your endocrine system. Melatonin is suppressed, and cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes at the worst possible times. You go to bed exhausted, yet your brain remains in combat mode. What we are witnessing is a mass cognitive decapitation. We possess the hardware of the most intelligent species on the planet. Yet we are running on a biochemical system that is chronically poisoned. Johann Hari was right when he exclaimed, "Asking an individual to focus in this environment is like asking someone to run a marathon while being peppered with tear gas." It isn't a test of character, it's an act of cruelty. However, there is a counter-argument I want to pose to Hari. He believes we can reverse this by changing the system, but the reality might be more ruthless. We are undergoing a form of long-term cognitive filtering. These chronically inflamed brains are giving rise to generations with entirely different neural architectures, generations for whom the concept of deep work will become a myth. Much like the ability to read ancient hieroglyphs. The ultimate consequence isn't just a drop in productivity, it is the erosion of personal identity. Because if you cannot control the biochemical reactions happening inside your own system, then what you call the self is actually just an illusion, a byproduct of inflammation and dopamine deficiency. Once the body has been occupied, and the brain has been burned, the thief performs the final, most heartless move of the heist. It doesn't just stop you from thinking, it strips away your inner voice, the only thing that separates a human being from a soulless AI algorithm. We are now entering stage 3, where the final silence disappears. Once the body has been weakened by biochemical inflammation, the thief performs the most heartless move to close the heist of the century. It is no longer just taking your time or your productivity, it is executing a massive psychological erasure of the very thing that defines a human being, your inner monologue. In Stolen Focus, Johann Hari describes his early days in Provincetown as a nightmare of emptiness. He realized that for a decade, every gap in time, from waiting for a coffee to sitting alone in the dark, had been filled by external stimuli. When we kill these moments of silence, we also execute a vital structure in the brain, the default mode network, DMN. In neuroscience, the DMN is not the brain at rest. On the contrary, this is when the brain is most active in processing the past, projecting the future, and most importantly, constructing personal identity. When the mind is allowed to wander, mind wandering, the brain connects the scattered fragments of experience to create meaning for your life. But in the attention economy, your silence is a loss of revenue. Algorithms are designed to turn boredom into an unbearable state. When you trade those precious silences for bite-sized fragments of information, you are also trading away your capacity for self-dialogue. The ruthless wow here is not that you lose your ideas, but that you lose your voice. Your inner monologue is gradually replaced by the language of the algorithm. You begin to think, worry, and dream according to the patterns pre-programmed by platforms. We are witnessing a reverse evolution, from Homo sapiens, the species that reflects, to Homo reactivus, the species that merely reacts. Think back to the Silicon Valley elite we discussed at the beginning. Why are they willing to pay thousands of dollars just for silence? Because they understand that every breakthrough in creativity requires gestation in stillness. If Virginia Woolf had a smartphone constantly vibrating in her pocket, would the stream of consciousness, literary movement ever have taken form? Certainly not. Masterpieces are not created through constant connection, they are forged in intentional solitude. Johann Hari presents an existential fear. A society fractured by distraction becomes a society powerless to solve complex problems. We can debate climate change in 280 characters, but no one has the patience to understand its actual structure. We become entities that know everything but understand nothing. Here, I want to offer a counter perspective to Hari. He calls for systemic change, but in today's world, where AI can already simulate any shallow form of creativity, silence has become the ultimate survival skill. AI can write code, compose music, and edit films, but it has no inner voice. It has no wild dreams nurtured in deep stillness. The only thing that prevents you from being replaced by an algorithm is the depth of the silence you can endure. This heist has gone on so long that we now consider distraction a natural attribute. But if you are still watching this, it means the last fortress within you is still resisting. So, after deconstructing the status trap, the biological level disruption, and the fading of the soul, what do? Is there a path for those who want to reclaim cognitive sovereignty in a world full of noise? We now move to the final part, the resistance. We often approach the problem of distraction as a personal technical glitch. We apply band-aids, like the Pomodoro technique or notification blocking apps to patch up a wound that is actually a systemic infection. But Johann Hari exposes a brutal truth. Asking an individual to save their own focus in this era is like asking someone standing in the middle of a fire to simply learn how to regulate their breathing. It isn't just impossible, it is a cruel evasion of responsibility by the system. Focus is no longer just a productivity tool. Focus is an act of political resistance. Hari's solution doesn't lie in small hacks. He calls for a cognitive decolonization to avoid becoming the digital underclass we discussed at the beginning. You cannot just turn off your notifications. You must reclaim your biological sovereignty and your sacred space for silence. The most valuable advice here? Stop trying to manage your time. Start managing your environment. First, biological resistance. Treat whole foods and uninterrupted sleep as your primary biohacking weapons. You must extinguish the fire of inflammation in your brain before you can hope to rebuild great ideas. Second, establish data blank zones. Designate physical spaces in your home where technology is strictly forbidden. This will be the incubator, where your default mode network and your inner voice can be reborn. We are standing at the most ruthless crossroads of natural selection in human history. On one side is the effortless dissolution into the data stream of Homo reactivus, those who only know how to react. On the other is the painful, lonely, yet proud effort to retain the human privilege of deep thought and dreaming. This is Page Condensed. I am not asking you to subscribe just so you have more content to consume when you're bored. In fact, I sincerely hope you turn off your screen the moment this video ends. But do hit subscribe, so that every time you consciously return here, we have a point of intellectual depth sharp enough to remind each other, your attention is your freedom. Do not let any algorithm set a price on it. If even one moment of silence returned to you today, this video did its job. I will see you in the silence, where the masterpieces truly begin.